Okay. Hi everyone. This is Shuruf from GDG Kuwait, and we are very delighted to have you all with us today. Today we have a special guest, Wafa Wahida. She is from GDG Doha. She's a software engineer based in Doha, Qatar, and she will be giving you today. Um, the main topic of today is need for speed, which is related to Angular material. Um, I would like to leave you with her so she would be able to introduce herself and the main topic. Thank you again, Nawafa, for joining us, and I'll leave the stage for you.
Thanks, Shuruk. Thanks for having me. Thanks to GDG Kuwait for hosting such a wonderful Google I/O. So yes, today's topic is need for speed, and it's basically about just how users these days are having high-end tech devices on there, and how they're like there's an urge for speed. They want to constantly have a faster experience. They're very like getting impatient, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the user experience side of things, and also like the practical side where how do you actually get these things done with something like Angular material, which is a UI component library you can use on Angular. Angular is a very well-known framework for developing front-end. So we're going to see like some hands-on examples and also like some in-depth examples about how we can cater to the need for speed with the front-end apps that you guys create using Angular. So let me start by getting straight into the topic basically. So all of you, or at least most of you in the audience today, I'm expecting you've done some web apps, or if you haven't, you would have had at least an encounter with web apps. So this talk is purely for front-end developers, or even if you have done some front-end in your experience, then this is totally for you. This talk is gonna talk about faster perceived response time with Angular material and how you can tackle the need for speed. So how do you, from code to the experience of your website, how are you gonna achieve that? How are you gonna get how are you gonna satisfy the user's need for speed? Let's start with the problem. Well, did you know that the average attention span of a human being is close to less than 8 seconds these days? In 2013, as you can see on the infographic, the National Center for Biotechnology Information, they said that in 2013, the human being attention span is on an average 8 seconds. And now, given that there's a lot of technology improvements, like all of us have 8 GB RAM or a 4 GB RAM and big high tech monitors. So our users these days are not normal people who were probably using not so advanced technology. Now the users, our end users, have a lot of power. And with that power, they're expecting a lot of speed and performance. Imagine your website doing a task for a very long time. Like for example, your web app is having a chat window, and once the user contacts help and presses on the chat window, it just takes forever to appear. So the user gets really frustrated. Your user is really in a very big screen with high-end internet. He's just he's becoming very impatient, and he also has a very small attention span. So we know that front-end developers are already superheroes, and because they tackle with they really cater to the end user's needs, and it gets very challenging for front end developers when it comes to users whose attention span is less and who are using high tech technology, and they literally have very low tolerance for delay. So how what do you think is naturally, like, there's need for speed is quite high, and most of the interactions that they perform with your app is dealing with like maybe like a HTTP request, or like waiting for an order to be submitted, or support chat reply, or even filling out a very long form. These typical interactions in your web app are are what, like, really decide on a user's experience these days. And with his high power high power technology, like, the monitor, the internet connection, all of this, he's literally like very impatient, and he wants this urge, like he has that urge for a speed of very fast UI or an app. So at challenges like these, what can we do? That's what this talk is about. So we talked a lot about the user's bad side. Okay, but what is good experience? What is good user experience? Good user experience is all about user control. The system should not control the users, and the users should be able to control the system. So your app, in order to first kind of make the users have that need, I mean, like, kind of try to minimize the need for speed, or even like have like your app to qualify as a good experience app, you need to give the user the control of just the feeling of, okay, yeah, I'm in control of this app. That this can be achieved by a lot of techniques, whereas like in the image here you can see that when the user is controlling the system, he does something, he waits, and then he fills, and then he fills back. So as you can see, there's like a flow, he's interacting, he's in control, and there's like, if he did something wrong, he can go back. So good user experience is all about control. And now, speaking of like the need for speed, there's two things that we might have to know. Specifically, like the difference between response time and something called as psychological time. So let's first like elaborate on this difference, on what a response time is and what psychological time is, in terms of the web app that your users are interacting with, and in terms of like just the users itself. And then let's look at some practical examples. So that's what I have for today. So let's see what response time is. Response time is time taken to respond to a user action. So the time your app takes in order to respond to like a click of a button. In the case of this app, you can see that the user clicked on an image, and you can see how the image is like having an animation, it's coming up. So that's basically it. In a context of a web app, which will be short time is time taken to respond to a user action. It could be a click of a button to check out the products that the users are shopping. It could be any user action that your user takes on your app. And there's actually a group called Nielsen Norman Group. They have some. They're actually a user experience consultancy and a research group. They're very well known in the field of UX. So they came up with 3 important limits for response time. So how can this? What does like we just said? Response time is time that the time it takes for your app to respond to the user action. But the Nielsen Norman Group, they're suggesting 3 main time limits, and that is to 0.1 second, 1 second, and 10 seconds. So they say that 0.1 second is like the minimum time your app should take to respond to a user action, and 1 second for a certain set of user action, and 10 seconds for a certain set of user actions. So when you are trying to optimize the experience, or even your web application performance, but we're going to talk about the user experience side of things today. So the 3 main time limits for you to take in consideration is 0.1 second, 1 second, and 10 seconds. So as you can imagine, 0.1 second is just like for something immediate, like immediate feedback. A user clicked on a button like register or checkout. the user is expecting something immediate to happen, and that should be in 0.1 second. And 1 second, the other 1 second response time, this can be in the context of, okay, the user is moving between pages. Now like the entire page has to move. Like he clicked on checkout. Now after the checkout, the payment page should come. So that transition can be for 1 second. And the longer response time of 10 seconds can be tolerable for maybe when the users clicked on submit or even checkout and something's happening, it can be for 10 seconds. But as you can see that we saw that the average user attention span is 10 seconds. And it's still like a question, right? How are we gonna satisfy the urge of need for speed for our end users? But this is what the group is proposing: 0.1 second, 1 second, and 10 seconds. Just a minute. Okay. So now let's look into the other part. That's the psychological time. The psychological time is time perceived by the end users, which can also be called as users' perceived response time. It's not the response time of your app, it's the time the user perceives. It could be, maybe your web app is loading for 5 minutes, but it might seem like 1 hour for a user. Or it could be, I'm just exaggerating here, right? Maybe your web app is, showing the loading sign for about 1 minute, and it feels like 10 minutes for the user. It's a lot, So psychological time is actually a very well-known term in psychology, and this is what we use as user experience experts or user experience engineers working on web apps to kind of measure the user's need for speed. So the psychological time perceived by end users is what is will make your users feel in more control, and they'll feel like if you try to optimize this psychological time, it means that your app is having good speed, and you are able to kind of make your end users perceive time and speed in a better way. So your web app is more performant. So let's look at how we can do all of this, how we can specifically improve the psychological time, optimize the psychological time. Let's look at now the hands-on part of how different ways we can use the components that Angular Material provides to kind of optimize this psychological time. So the UI feedback that you give is what makes the users more in control, right? So the UI feedback is the key, and we're going to look at different components that Angular Material has and see how we can do this. So as you can see, UI feedback is something using UI components, right? So what we're now going to talk about is the Angular Material, which is a UI component library for Angular, which is a web application framework. We're going to see how what are the components Angular Material has, so that you can use in your web app. And we're going to discuss the psychological time and ways to optimize psychological time. So material.angular.io is the website. As you can see, it has all these components. I just clicked on components, and you can see all of the components that Angular Material provides off the shelf. So we'll first look into what are the basic components that you can show. For example, your web app will for sure definitely have a button, and once you click on that, some kind of a HTTP request or some delay is expected. So what are the different ways of feedback that you can provide using components in Angular Material? That's what we're going to see now. So it's more like UX and applied UX with some code, because you're all front-end developers, and we all need to know how to do this. And Angular Material is the most used when you're using Angular. most used UI library. So as you can see on the left, like in the sidebar, they've provided a lot of components. What is interesting to me is progress bar. So progress bar is something that indicates progress or activity. And there's like different modes in a progress bar. And there's also like a progress spinner. Progress bar is a bar, whereas progress spinner is something like a spinner, like it keeps spinning. And there are also buttons that Angular provides. So these are the three things we'll be diving deep into right now. And let me go back to the presentation. So this is what you call like as a progress spinner, which is like, imagine this on your web app now. We can all take like a minute to imagine this. Like, the user has checked out and this is what your app is showing right now. Can you imagine how frustrating it gets for the user? Like, with all that amazing technology and internet connection, and even if he doesn't have it, it's just like it makes your user very impatient, and of course he's lost attention whatsoever. So like, how can we optimize, by not showing just like a loader, a spinner which is just indeterminate. It's you don't know when it's gonna stop. It's just spinning basically. I mean, it is indicating progress. Okay, I clicked on a button and something's loading, but I don't know when this is gonna end and how long am I supposed to wait. And I don't know if my screen got stuck. I'm just like, as a user, I'm confused. So while this is like my status with the spinner, it's the same with the bar as well, right? Like, I mean, yeah, but at least I know that there's a finish. There's going to be a finish, and it's saying it's loading, so that's a good sign, I guess. So I would any day prefer like a progress bar over a spinner, because simply because as a end user, I can perceive. I have like some I can make up my mind saying that this is how long I have to wait. So it's kind of determinate. It's helping me kind of determine how long I have to wait. So a progress bar is probably better than a progress spinner. This is the kind of discussion we're not going to be having. So, but to just summarize, and all of the terminology I kind of threw at you, like, I said determinate, indeterminate, dynamic, static, like while we were just talking about those two spinners. To just summarize, static feedback is just something which doesn't tell you anything. It just it does not provide any information about the process. The user clicked a button, but what's happening under the scenes? What's the process that's going on? Whereas dynamic is the opposite. Dynamic provides the state happening behind the scenes with the process that the user just initiated. And determinate is something which which lets the user know, as in the case of the progress bar, we saw that, okay, this is how long I have to wait. So the determinate is something, a progress indicator is called as a determinate when it lets the user know that, this is how long it's going to take for you. This is how long it's going to take for the process to complete, and you have to wait for so long. That's a determinate progress indicator, or a UI feedback that you can give to your user. And there's also an indeterminate mode where it's just like spinning, and you don't know when it's going to stop and it's going to end. So this is just some terminology. And in the context of the progress spinner and the progress bar itself, all of this is possible. But what Angular material gives is just this, like, like a spinner and a progress bar. Now we're going to look at some code on how to make it determinate, like by default, what is the mode? The mode is determinate and indeterminate. And static and dynamic is just the nature of the feedback. So by default, the progress spinner or the progress bar is dynamic. So what are the more ways, like, we can optimize? What are the more ways that we can reduce psychological time and optimize it really, like for the users to feel that they're in control, and that they know that this is how long they're gonna wait, and probably like give them better user experience, so they don't have like increasing need for speed. This is just some code on how you can implement mat spinner or a mat progress bar using Angular material. So if you're familiar with Angular, it's already like it's a very declarative language. You can use composition to just compose the UI components that you want. You'll just say mat spinner, and the mode, using the mode you can set if it's determinate or indeterminate. And you can also set a value. The value is the current progress of the progress indicator. So if you want to say like it's 70% done of 100, you can just say 70. And the same goes with progress bar. We'll look into a detailed code example later with an interactive IDE. So another way of implementing the progress indicators is through by combining two things. We just saw progress indicators by themselves, the progress bar and the progress spinner. Now you can think of combining these two things. So there's a button, and once the user clicks on the button, there's like a loading bar. Imagine this on the register. So like the loading spinner. So this is good feedback. It's immediate. It can be used for immediate feedback to give like the 0.1 second feedback. Once the user clicks on submit, you can say that, okay, yeah, the button was clicked, and something's going on. Like it can indicate that the process has started. So the way you can implement this is also like some code. We just saw how to implement progress spinner. Now, like to implement a progress spinner inside a button, you'll just call a button, like you'll say button, and then you'll set the spinner as an icon, and you can basically use the same properties. You can use the mode, you can use the diameter, value, everything here. So it's basically again composition, and you can compose your components this way. So, I mean, if you're like me, you'll hate probably code on, code on slides. I don't think code is meant to be on slides, but I had to force myself to do this. So I want to show you interactive stack blitz of what we just said and what all we discussed about the progress indicators. And later we can get into like more examples of what can be done. So let's look at Stack Blitz. Stack Blitz is an interactive code IDE. It's online. It's an online code IDE. You can create apps like using React or Angular or any app. It's an interactive. And doesn't let you you don't have to install all of these and all of these frameworks like React, Angular on by yourself. So you can just create a Stack Blitz and say Angular app, and it'll create it. So what I now have for you on this Stack Blitz is some code which we are both gonna walk through. But let's look at the demo here first. These are all examples of whatever we discussed. There's determinate, there's indeterminate, there's static, there's progress indicator inside a dialog. I have a lot of examples for you. So let's look at it one by one. I think we already covered this and this. So let's look at the determinate task completion time a little in detail. So okay, so what you can see here on the screen is the progress indicator. As you can see, the determinate task indicator is something which loads like this. Let me just show you that one. Let's just look at one example. I don't want to confuse you guys with a lot of things. So you see in the determinate task indicator, it's just an example to show this is how Angular material you can use to do like a determinate task completion time. So if you look at the code here, what we have is a mat spinner and progress bar. We already saw the mode. The mode is determinate. How is it made dynamic? It's made dynamic by providing value in a dynamic way. So the progress value is something that your component can have, and you can pass it to the HTML, to the view itself, to say, okay, it's this much percentage done. So most of the time your APIs have it too, but for now I've just hard coded it, and I've used a async pipe. I've used RxJX to just like create a delay and basically just simulate values. But this can happen with async HTTP request, where you can there are a few APIs, like in Fetch API you can get something called as progress itself. Progress is a value by itself, or you can also, like based on the logic or some determinate states that you can have on the process that the user is gonna take, or the components that are gonna like be involved. You can estimate this time yourself, and you can provide that to the component by using a value and passing progress value, and that makes your progress spinners dynamic. So we saw earlier like an example of how to do your progress indicator with with inside a button, right? So this is how it looks. Sorry. So I want to show you how the button progress indicator looks. Yeah. So if you can see, it's still a button. I mean, just like the example, the code we saw on the screen, it's a button, it's a mat icon, and you can have the mode as determinate and the value as I don't know, 70 or something, and this still can be made in that way. Value can be set to, I don't know, 70. It just stops there. So this value can also be something you can give, but it's usually not here the nature of the progress can be indeterminate. It's fine. It doesn't make a user that impatient. Here the user just clicked on submit and there's like a progress indicator, and you can show something else to cover to show more details about the progress, or give him more feedback so he feels more in control. So this is we saw the progress indicators by themselves. We also saw how it's done with a button. Now let's see how to do this with within like a dialog box. Sorry. So the dialog box is something that so the user just clicked on, maybe I don't know, a download button called download, and what happens when he clicks on that is, like, if it's a determinate progress indicator, it's good to show how many files he's downloading, and if he wants to wait or cancel, some way to kind of make him feel more in control, and say that, okay, this task, hey, it's gonna take a lot of time, and now only it's 30% done, and you still have 70 more files to go, and you're kind of like in a nice way telling him that in a nice way you're also telling him that you can either choose to wait or you can cancel, and this is one of the ways you can show progress in a determinate way. So I think we saw enough examples. Yeah, I'm just going through your comments. Okay, no questions so far. Yeah. Okay, great. Let's look at more examples of how this can be done. We covered the progress indicators from Angular material. Let's look at what are the other ways that, in general, you can use to kind of optimize psychological time. So the you can use to optimize psychological time is by providing UI feedback using something called placeholder UIs. And as you can see in the example here, Instagram already uses it, and there are several other apps that use this. So Instagram, interestingly, it provides a progress spinner and a placeholder UI. A placeholder UI is also called as a skeleton UI. It kind of gives you a feeling of what the user is gonna see after the page finishes loading, or after the HTTP call is done, or after the front end has handled the task and the task is done. What's the user expected to see? It kind of minimizes surprise. It keeps the user engaged. It's in short very good. Very good in terms of the user is more like, okay, he's of course more engaged, and he is informed of what's gonna come. So he's just like waiting. So this is one of the ways you can use for longer response time. Say for example, like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Within that window, you can show him placeholder UI. And placeholder UIs can also be used in places where it's just like a page transition. If you're moving to a new page, a few things take more time to load up. So at that time, you can also use something called placeholder UIs. The other two things which we didn't cover yet are optimistic actions, which I want to show it to you as a live example. But before that, let's look into how placeholder UIs can be implemented in Angular material. So there are two ways for this. One of them is using a library called NGX skeleton loader. So here you can see that this library automatically provides a lot of just like any library. This library is made for just skeletons. So you can just download this NGX skeleton loader and use it directly in your code. Or if you feel like this library is a lot of if you look at npm. If you think that your app, maybe for skeletons, you don't feel like downloading a library which is 113 KB. By the way, this is the node package manager. This is how you'll install things using Angular. So here, as you can see, it's 113 KB. Like it's maybe a lot. So maybe you're like me and you don't wanna download like an entire dependency for that. So what you can do is just do something by yourself. So this particular like placeholder UI, it's not very hard. It's really not very hard. It's very easy in terms of like it's just some HTML and CSS. So if you can look at this component, let me show you the HTML first. So all it has is just like a rectangle. And if you look at it, it's mostly CSS. So you can have several such rectangles, and you can have like width passed to it, and you can use something like this. All of the code and the examples that we're sharing, like that we're seeing together, so you guys can have a look at this in detail at your own free time. So here what's happening is like it's plain CSS and some animation to just use the placeholder UI. In case you don't want like your app to for something like skeletons to have something this heavy like a library, you can just go for that. Go for placeholder UI. So the other ways, we just saw placeholder UIs and how you can achieve that using Angular material. Angular material has nothing much to offer when it comes to placeholder UI itself. So you'll be using your own like custom HTML and CSS. Now the other kind of examples that I want to show you is something called optimistic actions. In the context of need for speed and optimizing the user's perceived psychological time, what most of the apps like Stack Overflow Stack Overflow do is something called optimistic UI handling. So, or even Figma for that matter. So if you just look for some question, maybe how to start, I don't know, something. What I want to show you is like a concrete example of, sorry, where am I clicking here? Yeah. So what Angular, what Stack Blitz does is like an interesting interaction that I want to show you all. So you guys, like maybe, I mean, most of you must be familiar with Angular, Stack Overflow. So what Stack Overflow does here is like something called optimistic handling. Optimistic handling is just like, you know, giving the user feedback of like the process being finished, no matter what happens in the backend. No matter if there is like a failure or not, you just first give the user a optimistic feedback, and that's why it's called optimistic handling, like optimistic UI. So what you do here, like what Stack Overflow in this context does is, like for example, if I want to upvote this answer, uh, it shows me like I'm done. Okay, if I'm logged in, but it shows to me like it's done, and it shows to me like it's done, and it upvotes before it kind of says that I can't upvote. Anyways, I think that example is too much for us to see. Another example I'd like to show you is some. So here, what they do is like once you try to create like a new screen, I mean a new wireframe or something, what they do is like they optimistically handle it and kind of show you the placeholder UI in prior, regardless of it being created or not. There are more examples, like, you know, if you want to say, for example, I want to create a new team. Let's say NGX. I don't know, some. So what they do is they kind of finish it and then say that it's not done or it failed. But another example of progress indicators is also like another example of a long action that we just saw is a form, right? Like we said, a user can get impatient when he's having like a long form to fill. So the figma.com, like if you can see, like, you know, their entire onboard form or creating like a wireframe form is segmented. It's segmented into what you call as steps, 1, 2, 3. Like they've broken down the entire step, like entire process into 3 steps, and you can skip or continue, and you can do something of these sort with Angular material as well. And these are called as steppers. So if you look at here, you can have similar form fields, and once you click next, it goes to the next field, and then you can click on done. There's more to steppers as well. There's more to steppers in terms of, like, you know, over here, as you can see, each step is even. Like there's 1 field in each step. If you want to have 3 fields in each step, that's fine too. But if in case, you know, your steps are not even, or your step is really big, like you have like 5 fields or 6 fields, you can have something like a progress bar here itself. So these are some of the examples, like other websites handle, minimize surprise and make even the steppers with long forms more determinate. So just to summarize quickly, we saw immediate UI feedback with progress spinner and on a button. We saw longer response time, like the ways to handle it using Angular material, using progress indicators, and we saw different examples of that. We also saw placeholder UI, like the example of Instagram, and how you can create it, like, you know, using libraries, or you can have your own. In case of, like, you know, just some CSS, and you can create your own. And we also saw optimistic actions, like how the upvote works, or even like if you're shopping on Amazon, they don't say that the the product is over or it's out of stock. They let you add the product to the cart, and in the middle, if before you pay for it, if it goes out of cart, they let you check out, and at the checkout page they inform you that it's okay, there's some this product is out of stock. So that's also like optimistic way of handling, like they let you finish it, and then towards like later they inform you. So that's like optimistically handling the entire flow, like the entire uh, process of the entire task process. So the one thing we left out is custom animations. And at times, like, people use also animations to gauge users attention, and instead of just showing normal spinners, they may try to provide more, maybe like more fun, or more information, or anything of that sort. Animation, this kind of makes your user stay engaged and notice it. And this way the user may probably like not feel that like, okay, yeah, this is just spinning all the time. No, maybe the bounce is just something new, and the user will keep like, it's just one way of kind of gauging, capturing, like optimizing the user's perceived response time. That's the psychological time. So this is also a library called ngx spinner, which you can download and use if you're using Angular. But Angular material does not have anything on its own. So these were some of the things that I had to share for how you can optimize performance. Optimize the need for speed, like hence like improving the perceived psychological time. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Wafa. Let's see if anyone is interested. Hi, everyone. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. That was a really interesting topic, to be honest. I work as a full stack developer, so I do a lot of front end, back end work. And because of like having to do all of this at the same time. Oh yeah, we have Shahd. Yeah, Shahd is asking, I missed the beginning of the lecture. Could you repeat the definition of Angular material? You can do it quickly if you want.
Yeah, sure. So Angular material is like a UI library which helps you implement all of these, the components. Like it has a lot of components like autocomplete, batch. So all the UI materials that you see on your web app, it helps you create those. It's just like Bootstrap, I would say, Bootstrap, or any other CSS library or a framework, like even Tailwind. You can use all of these with Angular material. I mean Angular. Like if you're using your web app with Angular, like you've created your app with Angular, you can use either Angular material, Bootstrap, anything. So I specifically chose Angular material because it's natively supported by Angular, which is that's one of the reasons.
Is there a specific website? Yeah, we can actually send this on the chat, right?
Yeah, sure. So material.angular.
I'll type it out. 1 second. Yep, thank you. Yeah. I think this is also similar to, like, if we ever need to apply the same concepts that you've discussed, we can also apply to any other front-end frameworks, which is really nice. And I like how this topic is not exclusive to only Angular. So this is really cool. So for example, my background is mostly JS React Native. And understanding more about like the response time and how user behavior is in regards to things like that is very important.
True,
it makes your work easier with the UX designers. Now you understand their demands. It was like, oh, we need a placeholder. Okay, now I understand why I need to have a placeholder.
Nice. That's, I hope it was useful for you and all of the audience. So
Yeah,
I've
it was.
summarized all of this as a blog post in case any of you want to revisit the examples and everything. You can
That would be
refer.
great.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're
Thank you. Thank you, Fa.
welcome.
It's been a pleasure having you with us today, and inshallah, we can have you more.
Inshallah, definitely.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Can you take a commemorative picture?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, I'll count to 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you again, Wafa. It was such a great pleasure.
Yeah.
And inshallah, we'll catch up again soon. Thank
Inshallah.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks,
Take
Shinu.
care.